Have you ever decided, right, this is it, I'm going to make a healthy change?
Yeah.
Maybe eat better, exercise more, quit smoking, something like that.
Oh, yeah, that feeling. The New Year's resolution vibe, maybe.
Exactly. And what do most of us do? We probably go online, right? Look for an app, a website, some kind of digital helper.
Makes sense. They promise a lot.
They do. But then, maybe it works for a few days. Maybe you forget about it completely. You try another one. It feels like some just click and others just fizzle out.
Mm-hmm. It's a common experience.
So the big question is, do these online tools actually, work consistently? And if some do, what's the magic ingredient? What makes them effective?
That's really the core issue, isn't it? The digital health space is packed, but are these tools genuinely helpful or just, well, shiny interfaces? There's definitely a huge variability in their impact.
Right. It can't just be about having a website.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into some really foundational research that tried to figure this out back in 2010, actually.
Ah, yes. A key systematic review and meta-analysis looking specifically at the internet for promoting health behavior change.
That's the one. It's called Using the Internet to Promote Health Behavior Change, a systematic review and meta-analysis of the impact of theoretical basis, use of behavior change techniques, and mode of delivery on efficacy.
Quite a title. It's by Webb, Joseph, Yardley, and Michie, published in the Journal of Medical Internet Research.
And their goal was pretty bold. They wanted to really systematically pick apart these online interventions.
Sort of look under the hood.
Exactly. Figure out what they were made of, like what theories were they based on, what specific techniques did they use, and crucially, how were they delivered online?
Right.
Then link those characteristics to, whether they actually worked.
And they even had to create some new ways to classify how these things were delivered online, which was novel at the time.
Okay, so let's get into what they actually did. This was a pretty massive effort, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Not small at all. They searched huge databases, screened like almost 7,000 different records initially. Yeah, then assessed over 500 full articles, and finally landed on 85 studies that met their criteria for the meta-analysis.
85 studies. And how many people did that involve?
Across all those studies, it was a total of 43,236 participants.
Okay, over 43,000 people. That's some serious statistical power to find patterns.
Definitely. And they were strict about which studies got in. The main part of the intervention had to be via the internet. They needed random assignment, so proper randomized controlled trials.
The gold standard.
Right. And they had to measure actual health behavior change after the intervention finished, not just whether people intended to change or knew more, actual behavior.
Crucial difference. So
Yeah.
what did they find overall when they crunched the numbers on all 85 studies?
Well, the headline finding was that, on average, these internet interventions did have a statistically significant effect on changing health behavior. But it was small.
Okay, that's small.
They reported the average effect size, the D plus S, as 0.16.
Right, 0.16. For those of us who don't live and breathe stats, what does that feel like in the real world? Small but significant.
Yeah, it's a good question. Think of effect size like a standardized measure of impact. A D plus of 0.2 is often considered small, so 0.16 is just under that. It means, on average, these tools nudge people in the right direction. A gentle push, maybe? Not a huge transformation for everyone.
Okay, a nudge. But here's where it gets really interesting and speaks to why some apps feel helpful and others useless. They found huge differences between the studies, right?
Exactly. That's key. There was what they call considerable variability in effectiveness. The statistical test for this, the Q statistic, was significant. That tells us it wasn't just random chance. Some interventions were genuinely working much, much better than that 0.16 average, and some weren't doing much at all.
So the average hides a lot of variation.
Precisely. That significant Q is like a big sign saying, okay, the average is one thing, but now let's figure out why some are succeeding and others are failing. That's where looking at the intervention characteristics comes in.
Did they see differences depending on what behavior people were trying to change?
They did look at that. Interventions targeting physical activity, diet, and alcohol consumption showed those small but significant effects. For smoking cessation, the effect was a bit smaller and didn't quite reach statistical significance across the board in their analysis.
Interesting.
And they also found that interventions focusing on changing just one behavior tended to have slightly larger effects than those trying to tackle multiple behaviors simultaneously.
Makes sense. Focus helps. But like you said, the real meat was in those intervention ingredients, theory, techniques, and delivery mode. Those were the keys to explaining the variability.
Those were the three big areas they investigated, yeah.
Okay, let's dive into those. First up, theoretical basis. How did theory play a role?
So importantly, they didn't just check if a paper mentioned a theory. They actually coded how extensively theory seemed to be used in the actual design and content of the intervention.
So looking for real integration, not just lip service.
Exactly. And the finding was pretty clear. The more extensively theory was used, the bigger the effect size tended to be. Interventions that really leaned into theory had larger effects.
So grounding these tools in actual psychological principles of behavior change seems to work.
It really seems to pay off, yes.
Were there specific theories that stood out?
Well, only 3 theories were common enough across the studies to really analyze properly. The theory of planned behavior, or TPB,
Sure.
the trans-theoretical model, TTM, sometimes called stages of change,
Right.
and social cognitive theory, SCT. And here's a really key finding. Interventions based on the theory of planned behavior showed substantially larger effects. Their average effect size was D plus equals 0.36.
0.36. Okay, that's quite a jump from the overall average of 0.16.
Yeah.
That's getting closer to a medium effect size.
Yeah.
Why might TPB be so much more effective, especially online?
That's a fantastic question. TPB focuses on your attitude towards the behavior, what you think important others want you to do, that's subjective norms, and crucially, your perceived behavioral control, meaning how much you feel you can actually do the behavior.
Right. That control aspect feels important.
It really does. And online tools can be quite good at targeting that. Think about it. They can break down big goals into small steps, offer tracking tools, provide feedback, all things that can boost your confidence and sense of control.
Yeah, I can see that.
They can also deliver tailored messages about attitudes, maybe use social features for norms. Perhaps the interventions based on TTM or SCT in these particular studies just weren't leveraging the online format quite as effectively for their core concepts.
That's fascinating. So it's maybe not just any theory, but one that aligns well with what digital tools can deliver effectively, like TPD.
It certainly seems that way from this data.
Okay, so theory matters, especially deep integration of theories like TPB. What about the second ingredient? The actual strategies used and behavior change techniques, or BCTs.
Right, the BCTs. They coded for a whole range of specific techniques, and again, a clear pattern emerged. Inventions that incorporated more different behavior change techniques tended to have larger effects.
So more tools in the toolbox is better.
Seems like it. It wasn't just about having one killer feature. It was about offering a variety of strategies, like layers of support, maybe?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
People face different barriers. Did specific techniques stand out as being linked to better results?
Yes, several did, although again, some techniques were only in a few studies, so we need a bit of caution. But things like stress management techniques,
Okay.
general communication skills training, modeling, showing people how to do the behavior.
Right, like demonstration videos.
Exactly. Also, relapse prevention or coping planning, basically. They're planning for slip-ups, facilitating social comparison, so seeing how you stack up against others, goal setting, action planning, making concrete plans, providing feedback on performance, and identifying barriers and problem solving around them. All of those show associations with larger effect sizes.
Those sound like the bread and butter of good behavior change support, just delivered online.
Pretty much, yeah. And there was one really interesting subtle finding regarding social norms. Providing information about what other people are actually doing, that's called descriptive norms, seemed more effective, with a D plus of 0.18,
Yeah?
than providing information about what other people approve or disapprove of, that's injunctive norms, which had a much smaller effect, D plus equals 0.06, and wasn't statistically significant.
Huh. So, telling me 70% of users like you tracked their steps yesterday is more powerful online than telling me your doctor thinks tracking steps is important.
In the context of the interventions they studied, it seems that way. Just knowing what others do appeared to be a stronger online motivator than knowing what others think you should do. It's a neat distinction.
Wow, yeah, that's surprisingly specific. Okay, so theory matters, more techniques are better. What about the third piece? The mode of delivery, how the intervention actually reached people.
Right. They looked at how the core internet component was delivered, but also if other communication channels were used alongside it, and they developed a new coding scheme just for this.
And this part had some really eye-opening findings, didn't it? Especially about adding other communication methods.
Absolutely. This is where things got really striking. The effectiveness of the internet interventions was significantly boosted when they added other ways to communicate, and the absolute standout was using SMS, text messages.
Text messages. Seriously.
Seriously, when SMS was used in addition to the main internet platform, the associated effect size jumped to D plus equals 0.81.
Whoa, hang on. 0.81, that's huge in behavioral science terms.
Yeah.
Way bigger than the average, bigger than the effect for TPV. Just adding text messages made that much difference.
The association in the studies that included SMS was incredibly strong, yes. Now we need more research to pin down exactly why it's so powerful, but you can imagine, right? Text for timely reminders, prompts, little motivational nudges, check-ins.
Yeah, they cut through the noise. You don't have to remember to log into a website. It comes right to your phone.
Precisely. It bypasses that out of sight, out of mind issue. It's immediate, personal.
So it overcomes a major barrier to engagement with just a website or app alone.
It certainly looks that way.
Yeah.
Other channels also showed benefits, just not as dramatic as SMS. Using the telephone had a small to medium effect, D plus equals 0.35.
Okay.
And having access to an advisor you could message or email for advice showed a D plus of 0.29. Even just having scheduled contact with an advisor had a positive effect, D plus equals 0.22.
So adding some kind of human or timely contact seems important. What about automated features within the website or app itself?
They looked at those too. Automated tailored feedback like getting personalized reports on your progress showed a small significant effect, D plus equals 0.18.
Still helpful.
Yeah, and just providing a really rich information environment, lots of links, videos, resources, that also had a small effect, D plus equals 0.15. But interestingly, simple automated follow-up messages like generic email reminders didn't quite reach statistical significance on their own. Their effect size was smaller, D plus equals 0.09.
Huh. So just automating a reminder email isn't the magic bullet. It's the more direct, potentially personalized, or timely communication like SMS or tailored feedback that seems to pack more punch.
Based on this analysis from 2010, that seems to be a major takeaway for boosting effectiveness, yes.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. We've dug into this landmark paper. What's the big picture message? What should someone building or even just choosing an online health tool take away from this?
I think the main message is that the success of these internet tools isn't random. It's about the design. This paper gives us a really solid, evidence-based framework. It strongly suggests that effectiveness is tied to how the intervention is built and delivered.
It's not just about putting stuff online. It's about designing an actual behavioral intervention online.
Exactly. It's about digitizing behavioral strategy. So for anyone creating these tools, the research points towards investing in interventions that are really grounded in theory, maybe especially theories like TPB that seem to work well online,
Right.
and packing them with a range of different behavior change techniques, not just relying on one or two.
And maybe the biggest surprise, seriously consider integrating other simple, direct communication channels, especially SMS, text messaging, which show that huge association with effectiveness.
Yeah, that SMS finding is hard to ignore. It really highlights that the internet is a powerful platform, but maybe its potential is unlocked when it's combined thoughtfully with behavioral science principles and, other everyday communication tools.
Now, this study was incredibly thorough, but like all research, it has its limitations, right? The authors mentioned some themselves.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. We talked about that significant heterogeneity, a wide variation in effects. That means there are likely other factors influencing success that this analysis couldn't fully capture. And also, some of the specific characteristics, like using TPP theory or including SMS, were only present in a fairly small number of the 85 studies.
Right. So while those findings are super interesting, particularly the SMS one, we need to be a little cautious maybe until more studies specifically test those elements.
Exactly. This meta-analysis identifies strong associations. It shows us what characteristics tend to show up in more effective interventions based on the research available then. It gives us a fantastic empirical roadmap.
But it doesn't definitively prove cause and effect on its own.
Correct. The authors are clear. These findings should form the basis for future experimental research designed specifically to isolate and confirm the impact of these key ingredients. It guides the next steps in the science.
It pushes the science forward.
Yeah.
Okay. So wrapping it all up, the core takeaway seems pretty clear. The internet can be a powerful ally for changing health behaviors, but its effectiveness isn't guaranteed. It really depends on smart, informed design.
Right. Grounded in solid theory like TPB, packed with various proven techniques, and often supercharged by adding simple, direct communication like text messages.
It really shifts the perspective from just health websites to sophisticated, theory-driven behavioral interventions delivered digitally.
Well put.
So for you listening, think about any online health tools or apps you've encountered. Do they just track stuff, or do they feel like they're built on some understanding of how people change? Do they offer different strategies? Do they ping you with timely texts or just sit there waiting for you to log in? How might knowing all this change how you look at these tools, or even how you approach your own health goals?
And maybe this leaves us with a provocative thought. Given how powerful something as simple and low-tech as SMS seemed to be when combined with web interventions back then, what other accessible technologies could be leveraged similarly today? Imagine health tools not just as websites, but as dynamic systems understanding behavior change, reaching people effectively through channels already in their pocket or home. Could smart speakers, wearables, or other simple tech offer similar boosts if integrated thoughtfully based on these principles? What other simple connections could unlock the next leap in making digital health support truly effective?